What's up, everybody? I appreciate you guys all tuning in for our Buffalo Trace comparison series. We did a 5-part series that kind of compared Buffalo Trace against some off-the-shelf products just to see what the differences were between Buffalo Trace and a lot of off-the-shelf products you can get. But today, and on the latest video of the Canton Bourbon Boys, we are going to recap all 5 of those, talk about Buffalo Trace a little bit, and we will hopefully set you guys on a good path to buying bourbons in the future. So stay tuned for more. What's up, everybody? Thank you guys for tuning in to another Canton Bourbon Boys video. Today we're going to recap a little bit of our Buffalo Trace comparison series. It was so much fun to do. I'm glad that a lot of people tuned into these videos, but it kind of puts into perspective a lot of the Buffalo Trace products in comparison with some of the stuff you can get off the shelf every day. Buffalo Trace is highly coveted, and we're not saying it's a bad brand. It's one of the top brands out there. A lot of people love it. There's certain Buffalo Trace products that I really like. A lot of times when I have tastings here at my house, I bring out a lot of Buffalo Trace products to compare it with some of the stuff that they can normally get, or maybe some limited releases that are pretty phenomenal that would kind of blow their minds a little bit and would steer them away from Buffalo Trace slightly. We did a 5-part series. We did some barrel proof stuff. We did the regular off-the-shelf stuff. We did some bottle and bond. We've done some single barrel stuff, and we also did a rye. And in the rye, we added an extra bottle from Buffalo Trace that was harder to find, just to kind of see how that one compared. Kind of similar to what we did in the Bottled and Bond series when we compared an Old Fitz 16 year to some of the rest of the Bottled and Bond products. Let's recap how we ended up. So, in the barrel proof series, I typically steer away from Stag Junior. It's got a very hot bite to it, and I typically don't like it. But when you do things in a blind, it brings out different flavor profiles. You don't know what's what. So a lot of times when you're looking at something and you anticipate a huge hype, you expect more from that product. So when we did the barrel proof, I was almost hoping in some way, shape, or form that Stag Junior was true to what I think about it, and it was more towards the bottom with too hot of a bite. But it actually showed up. It showed up in third. So the Old Forester 1920 showed up as our #1 product in that tasting. And it was way ahead of the rest of the products. So the 1920 was like a tier 1. And the rest of, there was like a 5-some that kind of was a tier 2 kind of tasting. Elijah Craig Barrel Proof showed up. And Stag showed up as a 3rd place finish for us, which was good. But in a way, like, you're comparing Stag, when you purchase it on the secondary market, you're comparing Stag to like some extremely limited releases that are barrel proof, and people pay a lot of money to get a Stag Junior, and really they can go to the store and get an Old Forester 1920, in my opinion, and get a better product. When it comes to like regular Buffalo Trace, like we did in our 2nd video, regular Buffalo Trace is quite good. And it's still another one that's really hard to get. But it's one of those ones that's not going to go quick off the shelves. I mean, if they have Eagle Rare, E.H. Taylor, and Blanton's, those are gone. But you might get some Buffalo Trace remaining. And from the way our tasting went, which I think we're going to do a live in the future where we compare all of our top products that kind of fell in the top tiers on this list. Buffalo Trace shows up. It was not our number one in that tasting. Michter's small batch showed up number one, but it was quite good. And I've always been a fan of the regular Buffalo Trace. I think for a bottom shelf bourbon that costs around $26, it's quite good and it's worth the pickup. In our Bottle and Bond series it was kind of interesting. The new Jack Daniel's Bonded kind of blew everything away. I mean, there was still one that was close to it, and it was the Old Forester 1897. So, Old Forester series is fantastic. I mean, you can't go wrong with the Old Forester series. Those bourbons are so good, and they show up in blinds time and time again. But the Jack Daniel's Bonded, I mean, I remember back maybe 10 years ago or so, I would never touch a Jack Daniel's. I thought it was a strictly Tennessee whiskey. It's got a nasty college type vibe to it, and it didn't give off good flavors or profile. But I've changed my tune on it since trying like products like the Eric Church and the Barrel Proof and the limited releases that have came out. The Heritage release, and I can't remember the second one was a rye, but that one came out and it was so good. And it totally changed my perspective on Jack Daniels. This Jack Daniels Bonded is an absolute steal. I mean, beating all those bottles in a Bottle and Bond tasting, which is unheard of. So it's still on shelves. It's still readily available. I would grab yourself a few of those Jack Daniels Bonded. I'm not sure if it's going to be a regular staple or if this is a product that's going to drop off the market in a little bit, but get yourself a Jack Daniel's Bonded. Really good. We went to the single barrel. This is the one probably most people were waiting for. Everyone wants to see how Blanton's compares. We didn't compare it to anything out of the ordinary. Knob Creek 9-year. We did a New Riff off the shelf single barrel. We did a Russell's Reserve off the shelf single barrel. We did a Four Roses off the shelf single barrel. And we compared that, and Blanton's came in absolute dead last to the point where it was so bad that it didn't compare to the rest at all. It was in a tier of its own, and which was quite disappointing. Rob in the video was almost sure that Blanton's fell in his number 2 spot just because of the neutral flavor profile. But it is highly sought after, and it's not a great bourbon. I mean, even when you to me, it almost compares to like the $17 Evan Williams Bottled and Bond. I mean, it had a similar flavor profile to that. And usually when I taste these single barrels and I do these tastings, Evan Williams Bottled and Bond is so easily detectable that this one tasted eerily similar, and I didn't want to specify which barrel that was when I was tasting it, but I knew it was the Blanton's bottle, and it's very unimpressive. But when you go single barrel and you want to try a single barrel and you want to go to the store and you want to get something off the shelf, New Riff showed up for me. I think it was second or third for Rob, but New Riff shows up. It's good. I mean, the single barrels are going to vary tremendously with New Riff. They're a young distillery. They're only 4 years old, but they're going to vary tremendously. And Knob Creek 9-year is an absolute steal. So you want to go out, if you want to get a single barrel and you can't find Blanton's for your collectible or the horse or anything like that, but you want something that tastes good, I would personally steer you towards the Knob Creek. They have a more consistent flavor profile than the New Riff. New Riff, though, we have loved. We've loved their limited releases. We have loved their products. We've done some barrel picks at New Riff, and it's been great. But between New Riff and Knob Creek, if you want a single barrel to bring to your tasting or you want to have it at home, you can't go wrong with either one. Our last tasting, we did some ryes. And because Buffalo Trace didn't really show up in most of the tastings, I wanted to bring 2 Buffalo Trace products to the show. So E.H. Taylor rye is extremely hard to get. So it's one of those bottles that you're not going to see. It's going to come maybe once a year to Ohio. You're most likely not going to pay retail for that bottle, but you're not going to pay a tremendous amount. Sazerac is one of those other ones that are pretty rare to get. If it hits Ohio, when it does, it's gone quick. So Sazerac, I usually enjoy Sazerac, but when comparing it to other products that you can get off the shelf was kind of interesting at the way it fell. So Pikesville Rye from the Heaven Hill Distillery fell like way in the top for me and Rob. And it was a phenomenal product that had not only a good nose, but a good finish as well. And it was great on the palate. It didn't hit like a traditional rye, which was nice. But it was very, very good. And it finished first for both me and Rob, which our flavor profiles are quite opposite. Rob typically likes the spicier ryes. I typically like the sweeter bourbons. So our flavor profiles are different. But Pikesville finished first for both of us. Pikesville doesn't show up on shelves regularly. It's not something that you can typically grab off the shelf on an everyday basis. But when it does hit, it usually sits for a week or two. And usually you can see when it hits, and it's not going to be one that's snagged off the shelves quite fast. So you can grab a Pikesville. And if you can grab a Pikesville, I would jump on it. Our second place in that one was the E.H. Taylor Rye. E.H. Taylor Rye hits like a typical rye. I think it's intended to be a typical rye. It's not intended to be a Saz 18 or something that's extreme in the rye world. I think it's intended just to be a rye bottled in bond Taylor. So Pikesville still beat its ass. But when you look at the big scheme of things, I think we want to do a live video where we want to bring in the 1920 Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, a Stag Junior, a Michter's, a Buffalo Trace, an Old Forester 1897, the Jack Daniel's Bottled in Bond, a New Riff single barrel bourbon, the Knob Creek 9-year single barrel rye, a Pikesville, and an E.H. Taylor rye. We want to see kind of how this thing plays out to some of the best ones we've had with respect to the 5-part series we've done. So I hope you guys enjoyed this 5-part series. It was really fun to do and see how Buffalo Trace products compared to the rest. But to conclude this, Buffalo Trace is not the end-all be-all of bourbon. Just because you can't get your hands on a Blanton's doesn't mean you are missing out on something special. There's nothing special besides a topper and a weird-shaped bottle. Blanton's probably would finish absolute dead last in every tasting we've done. The regular Buffalo Trace is a great product. Head down to the distillery, grab one if you can't get one where you're located. It's good. But Buffalo Trace is not the end-all be-all. People wait in line every week in Ohio for Buffalo Trace products. They go there, and if it doesn't say Buffalo Trace products on it, they're not going to sit in line. And I think they're missing out on a lot of good bourbons out in the market. And hopefully they still chase Buffalo Trace, because a lot of times when really good limited release bourbons come out, they pick Blanton's and E.H. Taylor over some really quality stuff that hits the market. Story time. I went, and this Old Forester 150 edition, I went to Simone's in Lakewood, and I showed up there because there was the 150 Old Forester was coming out. And I wanted to grab one of the 150 Old Foresters. There was about, I showed up pretty close to when the store opened. There was about 8-9 people in front of me, and they heard that Blanton's was coming out, and they were there. So I don't say anything, but at the time, I mean, it was the middle of the bourbon boom. I mean, it was 2020, 2021 time frame, 2020, end 2020. I think it was colder outside. I can't remember when the 150 came out, but it was 2020. Because I remember I was working from home at the time, and yeah, I was working from home because it was a Sunday morning at Simone's. And I sat there in line, and the Buffalo Trace hit. It was Buffalo Trace, Blanton's. They had an E.H. Taylor, and they got the 150 anniversary edition. And the people in the front of the line all grabbed a Blanton's. And I was lucky enough to take the batch one of the 150th anniversary of the Old Forester. So hopefully the people keep grabbing these Buffalo Trace products, because they're missing out on some really good stuff that hits the market. But once they see the horse and the Blantons, they go crazy. I would sit here and conclude this video and say the Blantons is a really good beginner bourbon, and it may be. But from what we just experimented in this 5-part series, I think the better beginner bourbon is Buffalo Trace in comparison to Blanton's. Blanton's was not good at all with what we tried, and it was quite rough to finish it. We ended up both pouring it out, and it was hard to do. But make your mind up for yourself, but don't think Buffalo Trace is the end-all be-all to bourbon. Make your mind up for yourself. Go to the store, try some stuff, use these reviews, and please comment on the videos below. Let us know what you want us to try and compare with each other to see what we think with our different flavor profiles is a higher quality bourbon. But saying that, everybody's palate is totally different. I mean, Blanton's may be phenomenal to you. So try it on your own. Try it on your own. Try these different bottles on your own. If you like some of the stuff we recommended, try it on your own. See what you think. Put a comment below. Let us know if you loved it, hated it. Let us know your comments, because we like to compare these different products together. We like that we have very unique profiles from everybody. And hopefully you guys enjoyed these reviews, the comparisons, and we hope to see you next time. But we will do a live video. We will compare all the top tier products from what we did in our 5-part series. And we're going to see what we think is one of the better products on the market today. So thank you for tuning in. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And thank you so much for tuning in. And we'll see you next time.